This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Hi, my name is Peter Tomasi.
Hi, this is James Tynan IV.
Hi, I'm Dan Jurgens.
Hey, I'm Dustin Wynn.
This is Jim Lee.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Mark Hamill speaking.
This is Kevin Conroy.
This is Tim Sale.
Hello, everyone. I'm Batman, and you're listening to my podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Batman Universe Comics Podcast, Season 12, Episode 17. This is Ian.
This is Steph.
And this is Theo.
And today, we're back in the swing of things. You may have noticed that we started a new podcast, the three of us, called Deceased Cast, where we're going to be reviewing all of Deceased, including the Digital First spin-offs. We hope you'll check that out. We know a lot of you are huge fans of that series, and we hope to give you some insights and maybe some connections. And if you're not following the spin-offs, we can fill you in on what's going on there. So go check that out in the TBU Specials feed. We also have some comic news, pretty big news that dropped on Monday. DC did, well, not DC, AT&T, which now owns Warner Brothers and DC, did a huge round of layoffs and restructuring. 600 people are reported to have been let go or changed positions in a serious way. And a chunk of those are from DC. Not a lot, but it sounds like anywhere from a tenth to a third of the editorial line, and we're talking senior editors, have been let go or are being restructured. Theo and I recorded a podcast, so check that out in the TBU Specials feed. That's where we're putting a lot of content for you guys. And if you have comments on either of those things, the Deceased Cast or our Specials podcast about the restructuring and layoffs, leave us some feedback on the Discord or on Twitter. We'll be happy to read that and respond to any concerns or questions you have. Steph, Theo, you have any thoughts you want to add?
It'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah,
not really a comment, but
yeah, I have nothing else to add. From what Ian and I discussed earlier this week, it's going to be interesting to see where things go. Not too concerned about DC as a publishing company yet. Of course, DC Universe is dead on arrival now. So it is what it is, other than in the comments I've already said. So I have nothing else to add on that.
Yep, I think that's pretty solid. And both Theo and I gave, I think, definitely on Theo's part, very thoughtful and measured responses to the news. We didn't have everything, of course, but we probably really won't know much until a couple months from now. I mean, we're still not quite sure the fallout of Dan Didio's firing back in, was it March? So, or it might have been May. But we still don't know all the fallouts from that. So we'll let you listen to that podcast. Let us know what you think. We'll continue to monitor the situation, of course, as it affects the Batman universe. But in the meantime, we have two reviews today. We've got Batman number 96, continuing Joker War, and we have a Joker War tie-in in Detective Comics 1025. So, let's get started with our Batman review. Batman number 96 by James Tynan IV, drawn by Jorge Jimenez, colors by Tomu More. Gotham City, years from now, Batman has nearly made his goal of no one dying in his city again a reality. In his high-tech suit, seen last issue, he defeats Mr. Freeze and his two sons, that would be Mr. Freeze's sons, then returns to the cave, talking to Alfred about his family and his city. However, as he walks upstairs, Alfred's neck breaks, and he wakes from the dream/nightmare. Harley Quinn has been taking care of him since he escaped Punchline last issue, and the city is fully under the Joker's anarchic reign, funded by the Wayne fortune. Elsewhere, Clown Hunter, a weird youth, kills some of Joker's clowns, saving a few people, and heads out to kill more. Harley checks Batman's vitals, but he brushes her off. She shows him Joker's terroristic advertisement campaign, a clear invitation to a trap at the Monarch Theater. He drifts into a waking nightmare of his parents' deaths, only like Alfred, their necks snap instead of getting shot. Hearing a hallucinated Alfred's voice warning of Harley's tranquilizer, he jumps out of the window and runs into the sewers. Fighting his way through several of Joker's clowns, he enters the Monarch, and Joker springs the trap. Zombified corpses. So, Joker War Part 2. Let's get some first impressions at the top.
Well, this was the first time I really recognized it as Jimenez's art because I'm so used to seeing him in bright, sunny, more happy settings, and then this imaginary hallucinating Gotham was definitely more brighter and more the Jimenez I know. So that was nice to see. I loved Harley. I loved Harley in her zombie-killing Walking Dead outfit and her scar on her neck. I thought that was pretty badass. Clown Killer's interesting. And I am glad that the zombies were dead people and not freshly killed dead people. And that makes it a little better. And my opinion of that Monarch scene is not as depressing as it was last time we read the issue.
Yeah, the art was somewhat interesting. Harley didn't always look like Harley on some of the panels, and it could have been due to the injury, but it was weird seeing that scar on her face. On her neck. Like stuff, yeah, it didn't always look like it was Jorge on the art, but it was still a decent read. Outside of Snow Cone and Brother, let's not see them ever again.
You know Tynan's going to bring him back, man.
I was so hoping that was a dream because I was like, the writing in this section is awful. I mean, the word I sired should never be in serious literature. And so him saying I sired these, oh gosh. Oh, and then their names were, was it Snow Cone and Popsicle? No, Popsicle's copyrighted. Ice Pop.
I think that's worse.
Oh, it's good. Oh,
it was terrible.
I mean, he really is it's just awful.
Yeah.
But it's a dream, so I thought it made sense.
yes.
Yeah, but let's not make that dream a reality. Pretty please.
Well,
but there was some interesting things that happened all the way to the end, leading up to Bruce meeting all of the undead corpses in the Monarch. So we will continue to see where Tynan is bringing us with regards to this war of his between Batman and Joker.
I had a good time. I still sort of had the same reaction I did last time, which is it feels like not quite enough happens in the issue. Because it's all very set up. I mean, we do see the payoff of Batman falling into Joker's trap, but that's the cliffhanger at the end, so it doesn't actually lead to the fight or how that's going to turn out. And Batman's been out for a while. You see Harley, and I loved Batman and Harley's interactions. I thought that was really fun, and Jorge Jimenez really drew them in a fun way. But I don't know, it still feels slow for some reason, even though lots is happening in a frenetic way. I guess we'll see. Tynan often has a lot of sort of setup feeling, and then boom, everything sort of falls in place at the end in a very action movie kind of way. So I'm hoping that's the case here. It's definitely how it feels. So our first discussion question. I always used to hate it when a reviewer would constantly compare single issues of a run or series to wildly different things. Case in point, there was a time when someone was reviewing some Thor series, and one issue they said it was like The Wire, so gritty detective drama. And then they said it was like a high fantasy adventure, which were just shallow comparisons for clicks or to show off your pop culture knowledge. But part of me really wonders if Tynan here is deliberately giving a feeling of several of the last big arcs from major Batman writers. So I mentioned last issue that I thought this sounded a lot like City of Bane, where you have a time jump and Gotham's under control of the villain. We haven't really seen the takeover itself. We jumped from the start of the takeover to being taken over. This issue really feels like Batman R.I.P. You have Batman sort of waking up from dreams and still hallucinating, and he's not sure what's real. He's facing a great villain. He's off balance. He runs in the sewers sort of alone, away from his family, and he's accompanied by a hallucinated voice. So in R.I.P., of course, that was Batmite, and here it seems to be Alfred. I would be very excited to see some Endgame or super heavy references in the next couple of issues, just sort of to continue this pattern. What do you think? Do you think I'm reaching at things, or do you think Tynan is deliberately recalling these arcs?
Well, I have to confess, I have not read R.I.P. I might have picked up a bit here and there, but I have not read it all the way through. So I don't really know to compare it. So to me, this is all new, because I am still a decently new reader to Batman. But that being said, there is nothing new under the sun. And one thing that we discussed a few weeks ago was, do people even like new things? And I think to an extent that you have to recycle a little bit the stuff that worked before, because you know it works, but you have to mix it up with something new and something fresh. Otherwise, it's just carbon copy and you're just being lazy. So I think that if it is taking bits and pieces from, whatever, R.I.P. and City of Bane and whatnot, that it's okay, because it's all packaged into something that's Tynan's own story. And that's okay. And since I don't have too much to say on that, I was going to mention that I actually really like that it's a dead character, that Bruce knew that well, that he is relying on this not really there Alfred, because it's really showing kind of like, not as much as Tom King did, but it's showing Batman's weakness. We're getting this from his perspective, and we're seeing his flaws. We're seeing how he's going into the fight not 100%, and that he is, in a way, relying on a voice that doesn't exist and doesn't actually know what's going on. So he probably shouldn't be relying on it. So it's just definitely showing a weakness of Batman's that is going to be a vulnerability that may cause some issues in following issues.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting that he's hearing the voice, he's responding to the voice, but he knows that the voice isn't real.
But he's also asking the voice questions like, are there any vital signs in this room? And it's like, well, the voice doesn't know that.
I mean, the voice is responding, but I mean, it's weird, but it's also understandable knowing the person that Batman is. So his mind is there, but not there. It's there enough for him to understand and recognize, I'm listening to Alfred's voice, but I know Alfred isn't here with me, really. I know he isn't here anymore. So, but to go back to Ian's question, first of all, I don't want to see any super heavy references. I want to get that out the way right now. Was not a fan of super heavy, although I was okay with Endgame. But let Mr. Bloom and the world of Jim Bats lay. But he's definitely doing it. I mean, I didn't actually pick up on all of R.I.P. until Ian mentioned it when the issue came out. But once he did, I was easily able to see it then. One of the things that, and we discussed it before, when writers do this, it shows that they are studying the history, understanding the history, and giving homage to the history. And I'm with that. I'm okay with those not so subtle references, but as well as those subtle references. Like I said, I didn't even pick up on the references to RIP until it was actually mentioned, and once it was, I was able to see it, and I don't have a problem with that as long as it's an arc that I'm okay with. So again, please, no super heavy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think that he's trying to copy those things. I just feel like he's trying to evoke those things because this is a big arc that's going to have, hopefully, big consequences for Batman. He's already said that he's not necessarily planning to restore Bruce's fortune immediately after Joker is defeated. And I think we all know Joker's going to be defeated somehow. We just don't know what the cost is going to be or how it's going to happen. I think that Endgame is more likely than Super Heavy. As much as I personally like Super Heavy, it's not a Bruce story, and this is supposed to be a Bruce story.
And it's not even a Joker story, is it?
No. Although, if you ask me, Bloom is really just Joker with a different face. But that's my Snyder issues coming in. Let's move to our next question, which is on the Discord. Punchlines attracted some negative attention. And on the online, and my local comic shop main employee that I talk to, the guy who usually rings me up at the counter, he's really frustrated, not because he dislikes Punchline herself, but he dislikes the fact that speculators are buying all the comics without even reading it, and they don't even care. They just, want to make money on first appearance of Punchline. So I'm sure first appearance of Clown Hunter is going to get the same kind of attention. But now that we've seen her a bit more, where are you on the Punchline issue, and where are you on the Clown Hunter issue? Like, how do you feel about these two characters?
Clown Hunter definitely made an impact on me because he's a child. And anytime, golly, you make a kid, his intro be whacking a bad guy through the skull with a batarang glued to or tied to a stick, like, to me, that made way more of an impact than Punchline's strategically placed cuts in her clothing. So that was just really wrenched at my heartstrings. Wretched? No, not wretched. But anyway, tugged. That's the word I'm looking for. It tugged at my heartstrings. And it made me sad, and it made me immediately want to know more about him. So, to be honest...
So buy the Joker Warzone #1 coming out in September.
So, to me, this 2 panels we get of this kid made way more of an impact than Knifey Go Lightly, who all she wanted to do was stab my favorite people. So, I didn't like her as much. I think she's interesting, but I don't know if she has stay appeal. I don't know if either of them have stay appeal, but I do know that I found Clown Hunter way more interesting as a character.
Just want to say, Knifey Go Likely needs to be a hashtag. Let's make that happen. So first with Clown Hunter, this was the first issue where he's revealed, and while impactful, and this kind of applies to Punchline as well. Impactful, but again, just very new. With regards to the negativity around Punchline herself, I'm not going to say my feelings around her are negative. I'll use the same term that I mentioned in the comments with regards to Punchline on the server. Right now, she's still unproven. Speculation is always going to overvalue things. But as a character, she hasn't proved anything yet. She has some growing that she needs to continue to do as a character for this reader. Not as a character in the book, but just for me to right now, and this is someone who's not a fan of Harley Quinn, if I had to choose between who stays and who goes, it would be Punchline because, again, to her credit, she just hasn't earned her way as a character yet. Does Tynan get her there eventually? He may. But, we've seen a lot of characters who have been created by writers who have, in many ways, gone by the wayside and have not been seen or not seen as much anymore. Hint, hint, Duke Thomas, Harper Row. So, we got some time to see where things go with Punchline if she continues to develop and develop as a character, but also prove herself as a character worth having around. Does she become another Harley or does she go the way of the designer? We'll see.
For me, I know it's not everybody, but for me, a good villain or a character at all needs to have a story, and it needs to be at least a little bit relatable. And I think that's one reason I'm just not a fan of Joker, is that there's nothing I understand about him. He's a psychopath. I actually looked up the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, and he's just a psychopath. He has no feelings. He has no emotion. He has no moral compass. He's just crazy and evil. And that's kind of the impression I'm getting about Punchline. Whereas, the two panels that were introduced to Clown Hunter, he's protecting the weak. And I like that. And I'm not saying, obviously, villains aren't going to always do that, but you have to have that touch of humanity. Like, I remember my favorite episode of Two-Face in the Batman Adventures is when he's the judge, is because it's almost like this. Oh, sorry, spoiler, in case you haven't seen a 20-year-old show. He becomes almost this third personality that is seeking true justice. And I find that relatable, even in a bad guy vigilante. So that's my concern for Punchline, is that she's literally just, and she's not another Harley, because Harley looks out for the weak. Harley isn't evil. Harley has relatable characteristics, whereas Punchline right now, she's just being sold as another psychopath. And I think there's only room for so many mindless, ruthless, not mindless, but emotionless killers. Like, even Deadshot has emotions and thinks about things. Like, it's just, I don't think there's just too much room for her.
Yeah, and I think part of what might be behind that is the fact that, as compared to Harley, Punchline is more of a Joker. Not just in being a psychopath, but almost just in most of the demeanor, with the exception of she's not running around laughing up the place. Whereas Harley was crazy, but she was opposite. She was the opposite of, she was the yang of Joker's yin. I don't think Punchline is that person. I think
Punchline's more of Joker, as Steph was saying.
Yeah, she's definitely more Joker than anything. And in the end, does the world need a female Joker? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. We have enough people who.
Well, remember what happened last time we tried to go that route with Joker's daughter.
Right, and people. Well, not just that, but
quote unquote fan favorite character, Joker's daughter.
People complain already about seeing the Joker too much. And being okay if he was to go away for a few years or more. And maybe that's part of the plan, and she replaced him. I don't know if I really want to see that. And I would rather see a Harley again, not a Harley fan, before I see more punchline. Because right now all we see is a Joker with boobs, and that's I don't necessarily think we need that.
I think those are really good thoughts by both of you. I'm still really on the fence for both of them. I think everyone remembers from episode 300, I really loved Punchline's origin. I think it was very appropriate for our time. It's campus radicalization, the radicalization of the young into violent ideologies with maybe some good intentions, but it really just spirals out of control into violence. It feels really relatable, but unfortunately her appearance here in Batman haven't really played with that. So I'd like to see Tynan, test her, put her in a hard situation where she doesn't get what she wants, and we see what she's made of. We see that reaction. Make more thematic commentary. Clown Hunter, I think everyone knows, I hate Joker. So a character who hates Joker and goes around killing Joker's henchmen, I'm on board with. I just really like that. I will freely admit, he does seem like a very young lad.
Think of the children. Won't somebody please think of the children?
But I'm just with him. I'm sure he'll do something that we're not supposed to like in the future, but I'm on board with his mission.
Do we know exactly how old he is? Did Tynan perhaps mention it in his newsletter?
He hasn't. That's why I said jokingly, but also seriously, because I'm definitely buying it. Buy the Joker War Zone. It's one shot, and it's going to have a short story devoted entirely to Clown Hunter. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot more details, just like we got a lot more details about Punchline in the Joker 80th. So that's my recommendation for that. How do you feel about the zombie trap in the theater? Does it make sense? Does the Joker's zombie technology feel too out there for Batman, or does it decrease the stakes for you, or does it work?
He's been using it this whole time, and that's why we even had a designer in the first place. So within the story, it's fine because it's been precedented. I don't understand what the trap is. Like, Batman is there, and there was no reason for the zombies to be there. Well, I guess they're going to attack him, but they're zombies. I mean, they're slow. What is it? Remove the head or destroy the brain. Like, it's not that hard.
The attackers can be stopped by removing the head or destroying the brain. I'll repeat that, by removing the head or destroying the brain.
I don't really care. Is that an opinion? I don't really care. It's not. I don't expect this is going to be a battle of much effort in the next issue.
Right now, this is, for me, the weakest part of Joker War. The zombified corpses. I do think it's a little bit too much for Batman. I'm not sure what the end game is with using them. I'm not crazy seeing them. I don't know if I really have much more to say with that. It doesn't make sense. I'll go ahead and say that it really doesn't make sense having them in the story unless we get something towards the end that justify it. But I don't see that being the case. So yeah, no. Put that in the no column for Theo.
I mean, they could be anything. I mean, it was literally the Owls, Court of the Owls in the last tech, and it might have as well been zombies in tech. I mean, it's just a crowd of whatevers.
I was just about to mention that. The Court of Owls is quite literally an army of super zombies, and I will go on record by saying I think that Court of Owls is an extremely effective setup for a story and a great addition to the mythology, but I don't like what it does.
So we got our connection. So now we know our connection. See, Joker used the same toxin on the talons that he's using with the zombies. Hey.
Now, if Tynan actually makes that text, I will actually go back and say that...
I take it back.
I will go back and say that Tynan and Tomasi are working well together, but he has to put that in the text. He can't just let us assume that.
No off-paneling?
No off-panel land. It doesn't count if it's off-panel land. But if he does that, it's great. It's a really good idea. But what I was saying, I'm not the biggest fan of the owls themselves in the world of Batman because it feels a bit too fanciful. Now, I know this is a world of Two-Face and Clayface and Lazarus Pits and Poison Ivy, a plant woman. These are not realistic. These are not really street-level superpowers. They are things that are completely fantastical and really science fantasy. They're not hard science fiction at all. But there's a sort of logic to them that didn't fit in my reaction to the Court of Owls. They felt too convenient for the writer. And I can't really explain it. And if they worked for you, and obviously they worked brilliantly, Court of Owls is still their best-selling arc from the New 52, and it's just such an iconic thing with that, round mask with the two black eyes and the hook. It's really catchy. I wasn't a huge fan of the talents. But because the talents have been around for 10 years, I'm no longer bothered by the Joker zombies.
Yeah, and that's what and that's what I was going to mention. When you mentioned, the world of Clayface and Ivy, they have history, so it's much more palatable to accept them because they've always been there. We can go back decades and we'll find Poison Ivy or we'll find Clayface. The Talons, again, about a decade old now. I'm just not the zombies. I mean, that be the case, you might as well just put the Talons in there, and let that be the trap. Again, another way of tying Batman and Tech together, but.
Does that make Batman an owl exterminator?
I'm sorry, little boy. You see, we're owl exterminators.
We're owl exterminators. Ow!
Okay, so let's give this issue our ratings. How many bat axes would you give out of 5 for this issue, Batman number 96?
I agree with what you said about not too much happens, and at the end, we're just greeted with this zombies. But I really did like that Batman is tortured. Batman is not okay. And Tynion spent some time focusing on what that is and where his mind is. And I thought that was moderately interesting. And I like that he cares where Catwoman is, even though we still don't know where she is or why she's not leaving or why she can't leave her bunker. But I would say 3 out of 5 bat axes.
I am going to give it a 3 as well. That end part with the zombies kind of did it for me with regards to taking it down a half an axe. So, yeah, 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to go with a 3 out of 5 Clown Hunter bat axes. Over on the website, Scott gave it a 2 out of 5. So Steph has created a new gadget. What is our overall rating out of 5 bat axes?
Wait, was it 2 or 2.5?
So I was a 3 and Scott was a 2.5.
So it's technically 2.875, which rounds to 3.
So that gives our review of Batman 96 a wrap. We want to give a call for reviews. We'd love to hear what you think about this episode. Comment on our most recent episode page at thebatmanuniverse.net, on our Discord server, which you can find on the front page of thebatmanuniverse.net in the right sidebar, our Twitter at TBU_comics, or our personal accounts listed in the show notes, on Stitcher or on iTunes, and we'll read your comments or reviews on air next time. For Stitcher, just click on the stars to the left of the page, then click on Write a Review. For iTunes, leave a review in the iTunes app. We'll read whatever we have, and even if it is uncomplimentary, we will try to make the show better for you. So, on to our next review, Detective Comics number 1025.
At Holy Cross Cemetery, Batwoman springs into action to assist a trapped GCPD as they come under a barrage of blasts from Joker's goons. As she keeps the thugs at bay, Harvey Bullock and the GCPD make their move to fight back. At Wayne Enterprises, a Jokerized Lucius Fox, struggling to resist the influence of the Joker toxin, uses Wayne Tech to mass-produce drones to assist the Joker goons at the cemetery. One of them heads in the direction. As Batwoman and the GCPD struggle to maintain control of their battle against the Joker clowns, Kate attempts to get the officers in line to surround their assailants. The officers resist, however, until Bullock gets them in order. As they begin to make their move, the Joker wing arrives and attack. As it comes back around for a second pass, Batman appears and takes out the drone with an EMP blast. Unfortunately, a second drone appears and knocks Batman from the top of the vault he was standing on before being taken out by the GCPD. Batwoman helps her cousin up, and they eventually head to Wayne Enterprises. At Sublevel 3 of Wayne Enterprises, Lucius sits at the controls of the 3D printers with a gun to the back of his head. Suddenly, the floor begins to shake, and before the clowns can react, Batman bursts through a wall at the helm of a tank-like vehicle. Batwoman manning the guns. Don't worry, they're stun emitters. Batman quickly dispatches of the Joker clowns, while Batwoman uses a large... Starting over. At Sublevel 3 of Wayne Enterprises, Lucius sits at the controls of the 3D printers with a gun to the back of his head. Suddenly, the floor begins to shake, and before the clowns can react, Batman bursts through the wall at the helm of a tank-like vehicle. Batwoman manning the guns. Don't worry, they're stun emitters. Batwoman quickly dispatches of the Joker clowns, while Batman uses a large cannon-type gun to not only destroy the 3D printers, but also the drones sent to attack them. Batwoman takes out the goon with the gun on Fox. As Lucius begins to succumb further to the effects of the poison, Kate gets him to Batman, who quickly administers an antitoxin for his longtime friend and employee. It won't completely stop the toxin, but it will slow it enough for Bruce to get Lucius to safety. As Batwoman leaves to handle another problem area, she agrees with Batman that they will need to take the Joker out and take him down hard. She's going to do what she does best.
So we have our first official tie-in to the present day events in Joker War with Detective 1025. How does this fit with Joker War? When do you think this happens?
Well, obviously after Lucius is taken.
Well, that's a good point. Lucius is rescued in this issue, so did we see Lucius in the most recent issue in 96? I don't think so. So it could actually happen somewhere around 96.
Except that he was unconscious for 3 days.
Well, but here's my thought. He was unconscious for 3 days. He wakes up. We see him jump out the window and plunge into the sewers. We don't know that he went directly from the sewers to the theater. Maybe there was some hours there where he teamed up with Batwoman to rescue Lucius. I guess we'll have to wait and see where Lucius shows up in 97 and through 100. But there's a theory right now.
I'd really hope, that Lucius was a priority of his. That would
100%. Lucius is great.
I think this happens after 96, and probably the main thing that sticks out to me that makes me think that it does. Two things. One, Bruce isn't walking around with a bandage on his leg from being stabbed by Deathstroke. And two, he's not under the influence of the toxin, of Punchline's toxin. He seems much more coherent in his interaction with Kate. So I'm thinking this happens at least after 96.
Well,
Wow.
I mean, I think you have an excellent point if we're going from the idea that these are tightly edited comics. I am not of the opinion that these are tightly edited comics, so I think that we're going to have to make some off-panel land assumptions to make this one fit.
Because I was really excited when I first started reading it, because I thought it's going to be Batwoman that can explain. Batman doesn't even need to be in this issue, and that way it can literally be at any point during Joker. It could be while he's passed out. But adding Batman into it, I mean, yay, Batman. But it really just kind of messes with the when did it happen jig.
Well, I think we'll have a better idea next week when we get 97. You know, if we get to 97 and Lucius is still ha-haing around in the sub-level, then we know, again, that this just takes place after. So I think we'll get a better idea of where it is. You know, it'll be a good project, I think, if after all this is said and done, to do a piece and try to put all of this in chronological order. That'll be a book.
I mean, I've obviously given my theory about when I think this happens, but I am, of course, open to further information. I'm just going with what I have now. And I think, as I mentioned, Theo has a great point. If we're assuming these are carefully edited, I don't think they are, so I'm just sort of... That looks just about right if you're squinting. What do you think of the characterization of Batman, Batwoman, and I guess Lucius is here, but he's still very much under Joker toxin. But mostly I'm asking about Batman and Batwoman.
Well, I actually did want to talk about Lucius because in Tynion's run, I mean, mind you, we haven't seen Lucius drugged that much, but the little bit that we have seen him, he seems to really kind of cave really easily. And I know he's drugged, and that was fine. It's fine. But in this one, he really seems to be fighting back, and I really thought that was cool. And I was really excited to see Lucius fighting back and not just be like, oh, yes, Master Toxin is telling me what to do. So I thought he was a stronger character in this tech than he has been in Batman, well, under the influence of ye old Joker toxin. Batman really seems like a guest star in his own book, which I thought was kind of funny. He's kind of written as Batman appearing in just a random book, and Batwoman really kind of owned the book, and I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was neat of them to do, to just acknowledge that this is detective comics, not Batman comics.
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, I kind of had the same thought. You know, Batman was, you know, a co-star. He wasn't the main character in this book, and I'm okay with that. And, you know, this is not the first time that, you know, Batwoman was the lead character, i.e., Legacy. Love it.
It's not even the second time.
No. So, you know, I'm okay with how this was done, and I liked seeing, you know, as Steph mentioned, Lucius, you know, doing his best to fight back and resist the Joker toxin. But it was also good seeing Harvey take control of the GCPD, especially as they began to question Kate being there. You know, he truly put on the commissioner hat at that time. So I'm definitely on board with how the characters were presented in this issue.
Yeah, I think it had a good voice. It was still very Tomasi, so if you like the way Tomasi tends to write, very straightforward and kind of businesslike with most of the voices, even as he gives nuance to each of them, it's definitely good. I I also thought it was really cool to see Batwoman take the center stage after Elegy in Greg Rucka's run, and then, of course, James Tynan's Detective Comics, where she was very much a co-lead with Batman and the rest of the characters, and she was very driving of the plot in that. So seeing her drive the plot again was really cool. I've always thought that, except for characters like John Kent and Damian Wayne, who Tomasi really has an affinity for, most of the characters, it feels like he's putting his editor's hat on. So people may not know, Tomasi was a big editor at DC for a long time before he became a writer. And so he's really good at sort of knowing all the things that are going into the character. So he references, the conflict between Batwoman and Batman in this. And I thought that was nice. But it also sort of felt like, yes, this is an editorial note that you might put in a caption box, but we put it in dialogue instead. So that was just my response to the way it was characterized. I thought in general it was very solid. I really liked addressing Lucius's situation because I don't like him being Joker's prisoner, so rescuing him is a really exciting thing for me. Big fan of that. I also thought that Harvey was done really well as a good bluff police commissioner, sort of really stuck in a role he didn't want. I'm curious, though, Kenneth Roquefort is guest artist, and he's a very different artist than Brad Walker. Brad Walker is big on heavy lines and a lot of dark and black spaces in the page. Kenneth Roquefort's very sort of delicate, almost spidery lines sometimes, and he really loves, detailed anatomy and having really, appealing characters. So, how'd you feel about the art for this issue?
It's not something that is my favorite. Like, I wouldn't probably list him as top 5 or something, but I very much enjoyed the art. I liked the detailedness to it. It added a depth to each panel when it's even just, Batwoman talking to some cop, whatever. Which, by the way, I feel like the army should have come and helped out at this point. Like, this is military grade combat. Why are the GCPD alone in Gotham? But that's a different topic. That's not what you asked.
I mean, if we go back to City of Bane just about 6 months ago, the military didn't come in then. So I think at this point, the U.S. government...
I don't know.
The U.S. government just looks at Gotham and says, well, we tried to get you out of America before. It didn't work that time. So now we're just going to leave you alone.
Yeah, you would think Gotham would have got the memo after No Man's Land.
Yes, but I liked the art. It was fine. I think I like depth. I like detail more than thick lines. I think it adds way more to each panel and just makes it more exciting and gives you more things to look at. And I like it.
Yeah, the art was good. Now I will go out there and mention, as I mentioned in my review, I am biased to Brad Walker et al. I've been used and have been appreciative of their art in this run. It has been the best part of it, in my opinion, up to now. But Roquefort did a good job. I have no quarrels with him. His style is similar to Quitely's, which again, is very stylized with how they both draw. But it was good. I had no issues with it. It's just it wasn't Brad Walker, but that's okay. We have one more issue with Roquefort. He's going to be doing the other tie-in as well, and that's okay.
And I think that you're 100% right that it is better for a writer and artist on a title to collaborate. And unfortunately, as we all know, double shipping doesn't allow that for more than about, honestly, 4 issues is optimistic. I mean, on Wonder Woman, we just got 2 issues with one artist, and then they're switching again. So scheduling for a twice-a-month comic is brutal, and I'm not a fan of the scheduling. I'm often a fan of the individual arts. I like both Walker and I like Roquefort, but it is frustrating that this is the second biggest selling Batman title and often the second biggest selling regular title in general. Over 1,000 issues, and we can't get an artist to stay on it because you're scheduling it too fast. But, I mean, I say this every episode, so I guess I'll try and rein that in. how many bat tanks would you give this issue out of 5?
I really liked this. I would say 3.5. 3.5 bat tanks.
This is the first time in quite a while where I really feel that the issue of Detective was better than the issue of Batman. This was really done well. I truly, truly, truly enjoyed it. It was definitely a tie-in. We were able to pick up various things throughout the issue that could tie back to the main Joker War story. Everything was great. I probably should have given it a 4. I didn't. So I'm stuck at a 3.5 bat tanks, but it was definitely a great issue. Better than Batman's, in my opinion.
I'm not 100% sure I can say I liked it better than Batman, although I am going to give it a 3.5, which is more than I gave Batman, because more happens. I mean, you rescue Lucius Fox in this issue. That's a really big thing that I want. So something I wanted to happen happened. It happened in a plausible way. It featured characters in a cool way. Yeah, I'm going to say a 3.5. So that doesn't mean I dislike Batman. It just means I think Batman is still building, whereas this is really just a one-shot. So it tells a complete story, and I'm biased in favor of complete stories. So 3.5 out of 5. That's 3.5 all the way across, so you don't even need an average calculator.
What did the calculator say? No.
3.5 bat tanks out of 5. We don't have...
zeros are that?
Oh, you're doing significant figures?
How many zeros? Yeah.
All right. So we don't have any listener feedback this week. Please do give us reviews, give us comments, talk about it on the Discord. We're lighting up into Joker War. We have 2 more months, and then we get to Batman number 100, which is the finale of Joker War. I'm very excited to get there. I think both titles are firing on pretty much all cylinders at this point, even if they go up and down depending on the issue. And I'd love
1 month from 10/27.
Yeah, exactly. So and oh my goodness, it's 144 pages. It's going to be such a long episode.
But tell that to the person who has to do the review.
I assume that's yourself? You.
Yes, I am.
Oh no!
Theo is going to be incognito from the server and the rest of the world when that issue becomes available.
All right. So we have a question of the week, which is, who is your favorite non-TBU comics character?
Okay, so my first is Kyo Soma from Fruits Basket, which is getting a redo animation after I don't even remember, 17 years after they tried it the first time, and it sucked awful. Oh no, it was great. It was wonderful. But this one's so much better. A more true, loyal adaptation of the manga. That's my advertisement for that. You should watch it now, right now, Funimation.com. But Kyo is a red-headed, angry teenage boy, and when a member of the opposite sex hugs him, he becomes a cat. And he's great. And he has a lot of emotions and anger to work through, and I just find him delightful, and I enjoy reading Kyo's character in that manga.
Oh man, I can't get with Funimation. It's just too many ads, and I'm too cheap to pay for the no ad version.
I got in when they were at $5.99 a month, and now they went up in price. So I grandfathered in my monthly subscription.
I hate you.
And then my other one, my favorite all-time character of all time, became a comic book character. So it counts, even though I have not read the comics with him in it that much. I've read a little bit. But Zuko, Prince Zuko from Avatar, is my all-time favorite character in any medium of anything of all time. And the fact that he isn't
my honor.
You haven't read anything yet, so how can you say
awful?
But he could be an absolute dope in the comic book.
He is a dope in the comic books.
I've read a little bit, mostly his interactions with his younger sister, who he finds after he finds his mom. And he's so precious, and I don't know. I love Zuko's. I love his arc. I love his redemption. I love him when he's a spoiled brat. I love him when he's not as spoiled. And I love Zuko.
He is a fantastic character.
For me, my second favorite comic book character is Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. She was my comic book crush as a little boy. Continued that way until I really truly understood that there was no way that could ever happen. Absolutely despise how she's being drawn today, but she is still my second favorite comic book character in all of comic books. And then after that, it was a toss-up between these two, but it's actually Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight. You gotta appreciate Marvel's attempt to create their own version of Batman. I consider Moon Knight to be that character. Crazy and senile, but still has a great history in the Marvel Universe. So those are my two, She-Hulk and Moon Knight.
I teased my fellow co-hosts preparing for this by saying, I'll use a Jane Austen heroine because Marvel did Jane Austen characters. No, they did Jane Austen adaptations in like 2011 through 2013.
That's cheating.
It is cheating. I'm not really doing that. But I'm tempted to say Wedge Antilles from the Dark Horse Comics X-Wing Rogue Squadron series, but he's much more a literary character. I know he's in the movies, but his character was really developed in the Bantam Spectra novels, X-Wing, spinning out of the computer series. So I do love him in the comics, but I love him more in the novels, so I'm not going to pick him. I'm going to say Mary Jane Watson in Marvel Comics, and this is a lot of different versions. I love her in...
I love that pick.
I love her in, the main continuity where she's, Peter's wife or main love interest. I love her in the Ultimate Universe where she's a high school, wannabe journalist. I love her in the new Insomniac video game where she's a Daily Bugle reporter. I even love her as Kirsten Dunst in the movies. I know a lot of people think she's a little too screamy, but I think she actually has a really good character arc. And I love her in Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, a really good little series. If you're an anime fan, it's very similar to a manga styles or shoujo, or I don't actually know what the girl version of shoujo is, but very big eyes, and the artist is Japanese, even though he's a Canadian. And he actually, I can't remember if he went to Japan, but he tried to do manga for a while, but now he's back at Marvel doing Spider-Gwen. And I really love Mary Jane Watson because she's got that... She's a hero, even though she's not powered or puts on a costume. She always tries to do good and to make the world better around her, and she's got such a great attitude. I mean, you gotta love that Stan Lee attitude that he gave her. She's so spunky, but she's got that good soul. After Gwen Stacy died, she comforted Peter, and there's that steel behind the party girl that I think is really good. So Mary Jane Watson, favorite non-Batman universe comic character, loved her for a long time. Really glad that Spencer brought her back to the main cast, because even though she was in Brand New Day and Slot's Run, she was really very much a cameo appearance. She would come in and out, but now she's a main character again, even though, she has her own series, but I'm not a huge fan of that, but I still love the character. So
and if I can just say this.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are any Marvel executives listening to this podcast right now, trust me, I won't tell CB, I won't tell Bob Iger, but Marvel execs, if you can do us one big favor, retcon one more day, please. Pretty please.
I mean, I think that Spencer's moving towards fixing it, but I guess we'll have to see if it actually happens. It's been a while. But
I'm a few issues behind in his run. I gotta catch up. I'm on issue 42.
Yeah, I think it just hit 45, maybe 46 tomorrow. But I co-signed that. Get rid of that stupid story. It's so bad. All right, let us know what your favorite non-TBU comic characters, and follow our examples. We can do comic adaptations of movies, comic adaptations of cartoons, manga. Do not be restricted. Just let us know what you love in the comics characters. Again, you can do that on Discord. You can do that on Twitter at TBU_comics or any of our personal accounts in the show notes. Or you can do it, as a review or on the website. I'd like to thank our patrons for supporting us. We couldn't keep the server costs going without your help. Let me just go ahead and read our wall of supporters. We have Ian Miller, Rob O, Stephanie Mounts, Ed Grouse, Captain America, Johnny McCloskey, Robert Lewis, Gerald Green, Real No Deuces, Donovan Morgan Grant, Brendan Roberts, Mary Garrett, Theodis Wright, Joshua Lappin Bertoni, Tim Garassi, Stanton's Grave, Hannah Garr, Austin Davis, Donald Townsend. Again, thanks everybody. We appreciate your support. And with that, that's the end of our podcast episode. Tune in next time to find out more about Joker War. And remember, check out our Deceased cast and our DC Layoffs cast that'll be dropping in the the TBU Specials feed. This has been Ian.
That was Steph. And this is Theo.
And thank you for tuning in to the Batman Universe Comics Podcast.